Today's video is dedicated to Saturn in the 11th house. We will talk about the karmic challenges it brings, the major lessons it can teach you, as well as ways of integrating it. Let's dive in. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer and astrology teacher, teaching classes as well as doing private consultations. If you enjoy my work, take a few seconds to leave me a like, a comment, subscribe, and press the notification bell. Watch more content. This is how the algorithm works. This is how it knows to be friendlier and helps me grow. So I appreciate you for that. Another way of saying thank you includes buying me a tea, a coffee, a croissant. Any token of appreciation, happy thought, good vibes are appreciated. I do believe that the universe picks up on the positive vibrations, and the happier we are, the happier the world around us is. Before we dive in, I am teaching a natal astrology blueprint of the soul course. Sign up at the link in the description or visit anastasiadoesastrology.com. Discover your unique blueprint. Gain control over the life that feels so unstable by understanding yourself, by learning yourself, befriending your strength, transforming your weaknesses into assets. You can become the you were always meant to be, the main character instead of the, what is that? Non-fungible player, not I don't know. There is a term in gaming for the players that you cannot play. I think it's like, is it NPL? I don't know. I'm gonna move on. Let me know in the comments below. You probably know. But yes, take advantage of the course. Sorry for the brief intermission. That's how my brain works sometimes. Sign up at anastasiadoesastrology.com. On there, you can also book a reading and pick up a candle or an oil. Highly recommend my Jupiter in Taurus candle. Jupiter is highly benevolent. It's in its joy in the 11th house, which is where your Saturn is. And it's very much the yin and yang of Saturn, right? Like if Saturn is restrictive and serious, Jupiter is optimistic, expansive, and positive. So could be really great. Extra positive and good for you if you were born with your natal Jupiter in Virgo, Capricorn, or Gemini, which are the signs of detriment and fall. So find all of that on my website. Today we're talking about Saturn in the 11th house. What is Saturn? Saturn is the last visible planet. It rules the boundary between the visible and invisible to the human eye world. And so it's very dim in the night sky, and it's a planet you may compare to like the death of vision, right? Because after Saturn, there is nothing you can see. So in astrology, Saturn is often connected to these dim and dark topics like death and poverty and hardship and restriction and limitation and delays and blockages. So if you ask many people about Saturn, people who know astrology, a lot of times those are the things they will mention, right? However, Saturn is not just that, and that is a very limited view of Saturn, right? Like Saturn represents boundaries. Saturn represents seriousness. Saturn represents commitment, and you need boundaries, you need rationality, you need commitment to reach your goals and to find success in life, and you need them to kind of persevere. This series of videos, Saturn Through the Houses, is based on Liz Green's book called Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And in it, she writes, Saturn symbolizes a psychic process as well as a quality or a kind of experience. He is not merely a representative of pain, restriction, and discipline. He is also a symbol of a psychic process natural to all human beings, by which the individual may utilize the experience of pain, restriction, and discipline as a means for greater consciousness and fulfillment. So through Saturn, you reach true fulfillment. Saturn is the legacy you leave behind, right? With only positive planets, we're probably never gonna like get out of bed and achieve anything. But if you have Saturn that impacted your life and affected you and created a sense of pressure, you're more likely to push yourself forward and gain success of any kind. So Saturn in the 11th. 11th house follows the 10th. 10th house being the place of recognition, the place of career success, status, and achievement. And 10th house, on many levels, is kind of like the end of personality climb, right? It's like the place of highest achievement, but it's also the place where we may be submerged by duties and responsibilities and hard work and demands of our bosses. And so symbolically, if we consider like the first house as the place of kind of birth and the second house more self-awareness, third house communication, you sort of see the progress of the person growing. And then the final two houses, 11th and 12th, represent the higher states of consciousness, right? The houses where we have time to explore our higher calling, explore what we can offer to our community with the 11th house. And with the 12th house, it's more about transcendence of the body, transcendence of the personal needs and upliftment, right? And so 11th house has often been considered the house of like hopes and dreams and community and network and wishes and fulfillment of wishes. But on many levels, it's so much more. It's kind of like, where does our life take us after we've finished maybe our professional goals, and where are we taking the knowledge we've acquired after living life for like a really long time, and how do we use that knowledge to improve the world, right? The 11th house is all about the group. It's about allies, community, networks. And so having planets here usually makes one very socially aware, right? My best friend has her son in the 11th house, and she's just so kind of loyal and committed as a friend. She's also a Taurus sun, so that makes it even more loyal and committed. But if you have planets in the 11th house, even besides Saturn, you would know that this is, a very sort of other people oriented placement. And just a quick note that you have to look at all planets together as well as aspects they're making for the most clear, accurate picture. Here we're just looking at Saturn. So for more specific reading, visit anastasiadoesastrology.com to book a personal reading. And so the 11th house represents your contribution, right? It represents your connections. It represents your friendships and how popular you might be. Like with Jupiter here, with Venus here, especially if it's like Venus in Libra conjunct Jupiter in Libra, right? Like very powerful, very lucky, very sort of accepted and loved individual. Versus Saturn, if you were born, which I assume if you're still watching that this is you, Saturn in the 11th house may create an experience of isolation. It may make it very important for you to find connection, and oftentimes Saturn here actually creates a few but trusted friends, right? A person with Saturn here will not necessarily, unless there's a bunch of other planets, and some of them are, Jupiter and Venus, but Saturn alone will not want to have a lot of friends, right? There's a desire for connection with Saturn here, but also potentially a sense of like detachment and a sense of like aloofness and coldness. But more likely than not, if you were born with this placement, you would want deep conversations, deep connections, loyalty and stability, and rather have a few close friends than many associates, right? So oftentimes there is an energy of an outcast or an outsider with this placement. Maybe when you were a kid, you didn't fit in on some level. Maybe you looked different, you spoke different, you had beliefs that didn't fit in with other people. And so oftentimes as a child, there is some kind of a sense of like loneliness on many levels, right? Loneliness is probably the true word that this is connected with, because you really crave closeness, but because maybe you, like, I don't know, sometimes the things we place too much emphasis in get taken away from us until we are ready on some level. So, and a lot of times people who are quite like the way people look at friendships is very different, right? For some people, they really want to have a lot of friends and they behave in a certain way and they fit with everyone and they joke around and they can be sort of people pleasers. And then there's that assumption like, oh, he's so well liked or she's so well liked. But in reality, it can be just quite shallow, right? And so when you have Saturn in the 11th, you are not someone who's shallow. You are, you're seeking really sort of deep connections and true understanding and true sort of unity. And so because a lot of times, early in life, you'll run into people who are not on the same page, you will end up feeling lonely, and you will, especially early in life, you will build like awkwardness and struggling to have small talk and being very self-conscious and sort of aware when you are in groups. And so it's like hard for you to connect, and it's also, it's also kind of, and you wouldn't even want to necessarily just try to sort of play around and be superficial, I think. So, the true, I think, the true integration here comes from finding self-awareness and admitting to yourself that you really want to connect, because sometimes Saturn can go the opposite way, and sort of people with this placement may claim that they're different and their ideas are too ahead of time, and just sort of be like, thinking that like you're so superior, even if you don't say it out loud. But there might be that like a little bit of an Aquarian quality, I guess, with the 11th house, where like I am unlike anyone else and nobody can see me for who I am, and so they're below me, right? So that's like Saturnian kind of boundary where you're closing yourself off from connection. So yeah, learning to be aware internally that you want connection, and there's not just two choices, right? There's not like, oh, I have to fit in and be superficial, or I have to be alone because nobody understands me. So being aware and looking for people who are more aligned with you. Not subduing your individuality, right? Not trying to cater to the standards of other people, and truly finding the right connections and the right people, and understanding that with this placement, you are meant to be more of like in charge. You're meant to be a person who gathers a colony of outcasts and gives them purpose. Sometimes you also see a person here sort of overcompensating if you were born with this placement, and like just being very busy, very social, and trying to constantly go to events while not necessarily getting into the one-on-one deep connections with people. Liz Green says it as well. She calls it a social butterfly with the wings of lead. So it's like, the appearance of a social butterfly, but in reality, it's very much not so. Like the person born with Saturn in the 3rd house being very chatty, and Saturn in the 7th acting as like a Don Juan, constantly sort of sleeping around. Well, in reality, there is that deep connection, deep desire for connection, right? So in order to integrate this placement, in order to make it more of a friend, you have to go within and you have to work on understanding yourself. And after that, understanding your true values, and maybe even developing a deeper insight into society as a whole, because of either because of your loneliness or because of your deep thinking, you have more of a bird's eye. You have an ability to like kind of think very rationally about community and about what the world needs. And sometimes people here can really lean very heavily into political involvement, but it doesn't have to be political. It could also be, like being a patron of the arts, or being a nonprofit manager. It's like being someone who organizes people and directs them towards like a change in the world is very much the goal here, right? And so this Saturnian influence can really help you understand the psychology of the group, understand the world, understand where human consciousness is going. And it's interesting too, Liz Green talks about how many of us may wonder throughout life. We may sort of play with the idea of what is the plan? Why are we here? What is the meaning of it all? And people with Saturn in the 11th are the people who may actually find the answer to that question, because you can look deeply enough and be focused enough, and you really care about people, right? You really care about connection, and the lack of connection in early life can actually be even more of a motivator later in life. So, being aware that sometimes, your sort of hardship, first of all, that it's not permanent, and then being aware where you're suppressing the feelings of loneliness, or if you're like pretending to be a certain way to belong, or, being aware when you've been hurt, and so now you mistrust other people and you project this prickly exterior, attracting hardship through the energy you project, because like forever attracts like. And yeah, I think, developing depth of vision, developing deeper understanding of what the world needs, attracting people who are outsiders like you, and knowing that you don't need to be liked by everyone, but as long as you have a few trusted allies, that should be enough. And working on developing some kind of plan, allowing your intuition, your insightful thinking to like take you further to where you can help the world be a better place. So it's a quite exciting placement, I think. If you're curious to understand this placement and more in your chart, book a reading on my website, sign up for my natal astrology course. That is the ultimate gift you can give to yourself. And I hope you're enjoying this series. If you're watching all of it just because you're curious, let me know in the comments below. I send you kisses. And I appreciate every single one of you. I'm almost done with this series. This is Saturn in the 11th, just one more. Woohoo! So thank you for watching. I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.